Some people step into the light where applause and glory belong to them, but others choose the shadows, quietly giving everything, never asking for recognition. Sacrifice is not always loud. Sometimes it lives in silence, in the unseen devotion of a heart that beats only to lift another higher. And when that sacrifice reaches its final note, what remains is not loss, but love, woven into music, memory, and eternity. She was the one the world saw. Every night, under the blinding stage lights, her voice filled the concert hall like a tide rolling in, carrying people away with it. Crowds rose to their feet, thunderous applause shaking the air. She was radiant, alive, the star everyone adored. But behind the curtain, always in the shadows, stood David, her husband, her quiet anchor. He never took the bow, never signed an autograph. He sat at the piano or at the writing desk, his hands shaping melodies like a sculptor working with fragile clay. The songs were hers to sing, but they were his to give. In the early years, they laughed about it. She would tease him. "One day, they'll find out you're the real genius." He would only smile, brushing it off, saying the music belonged to her the moment she breathed life into it. But as her fame grew, so did the whispers. "She's the star. He's just the man in her shadow." It stung sometimes, late at night, when she would see him alone in his study, the lamplight bending over his thinning hair, his shoulders curled as if the world had pressed too hard on them. She would bring him tea, kiss the crown of his head, and he would say, "Go rest. Tomorrow is your big day." And so she rested while he carried the weight of their shared dream in silence. The years moved like autumn leaves swept by the wind, sudden, uncatchable. Success took them to grander stages, but David began to fade. His hands trembled when he wrote, his breath shortened when he climbed stairs. Doctors' words hung in the air like storm clouds. A failing heart, time is slipping. He told no one, not even her. He couldn't bear to let his illness become the note that ruined the song of their life together. Instead, he poured himself into one final composition, a piece meant just for her, just for that night, their biggest performance yet. On the evening of the concert, he moved like a ghost through the backstage halls. He adjusted her microphone, straightened her dress, whispered, "Sing as if this is the last song the world will ever hear." She laughed lightly, not knowing how close his words were to truth. When the spotlight hit her, she sang the song he had written in secret, the song he had worked on until his hands ached and his chest burned. It was unlike any other. Each note carried the weight of years. The first day they met, the nights they dreamt with empty pockets, the laughter, the quarrels, the quiet mornings. The audience was swept into silence, many wiping tears they didn't understand. And as she sang, somewhere behind the curtain, David clutched his chest. Not from pride, but from the final beat his heart would ever give. When the applause thundered, shaking the hall like waves against a cliff, he was already gone. They told her afterward gently, carefully, as though breaking glass. The stage lights still burned when she ran behind the curtain, searching for him. She found him slumped in the chair where he had listened, a faint smile still etched on his lips, as if he had finally heard the song he'd been trying to write his whole life. Grief did not come all at once. It came in waves, like standing at the shoreline and watching the tide rise higher each day. For weeks, she could not sing. She could not even step on stage. The world seemed like a theater stripped of its music. But one night, months later, she opened his old journal. Between pages of unfinished notes and lyrics, she found a line written in his shaky hand. "The song is never truly mine. It is only alive when it leaves me and finds its way into her voice." Something broke open inside her, and something else was born. She realized that every time she sang, he had been there, not behind the curtain, not at the piano, but inside the music itself. The first time she returned to the stage, the hall was quieter than usual. The lights felt softer, the crowd older, gentler. She stood still for a long moment, then lifted her face to the microphone. When the first notes left her lips, she closed her eyes and imagined him, standing just beyond the light, smiling, as if to say, "Keep going." The melody wrapped around her like arms she could no longer touch, but could still feel. At the end, as applause rose again, she did not bow immediately. She looked upward, as though searching the rafters for him, and whispered so softly that only she could hear, "We're still singing, David. You and I." Outside, the night air was cool. Autumn leaves swirled under the streetlights, catching the wind, rising briefly before falling to earth again. She watched them, and for the first time since his passing, she didn't see them as things lost to the wind. She saw them as part of the cycle, the falling, the stillness, and then the quiet promise of spring. The curtain had closed on his life, but the music remained, and as long as she sang, his song, their song, would go on.